Imagine this scenario for a second. You've got a man with a staggering 72 prior arrests.
Wow. 72.
Right, 72. And he violates a court-mandated curfew. Now, he's wearing an ankle monitor, and the device actually does its job perfectly.
It pings the system.
Exactly. It registers the violation and sends this blaring digital alert to the authorities. But instead of immediately dispatching a patrol car to go track him down, the system is fundamentally programmed to just wait.
Yeah, it's hard to believe.
It waits for 2 full days.
Yeah.
And, by the time anyone actually starts looking for him, he has literally set a complete stranger on fire.
It honestly sounds like the plot of some dystopian thriller.
It really goes.
But this is the documented operational reality of how the electronic monitoring system is currently functioning in Cook County, Chicago.
Welcome back to PoliticallyX. Today we are doing a deep dive into a really staggering set of broadcast reports and internal system documents.
Yeah, and these documents detail a massive systemic failure. Hundreds of criminal suspects placed on ankle monitors have just, well, seemingly vanished into thin air.
And our mission for this deep dive is to objectively examine the raw facts, right? The procedural gaps and the real-world public safety implications of this breakdown.
Because that's what really matters here.
Exactly. We are leaving the partisan politics completely at the door. We really just want to focus purely on public safety and systemic accountability, because this is a critical infrastructure that appears to be collapsing under its own weight.
Yeah, and when you peel back the layers of this specific failure, you realize it's not actually a story about broken technology.
Right.
It's a story about how these massive bureaucracies interact with the technology. I mean, the hardware is doing exactly what it was engineered to do.
The breakdown is entirely human.
100%.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want to go back to that alert system you mentioned.
Sure.
Because I look at an ankle monitor, kind of like the check engine light on your car's dashboard.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right. That little light is a miracle of modern engineering. It's designed to warn you of impending danger.
But it doesn't fix the engine itself.
Exactly. Here is the critical flaw. The light just tells you something is broken, and that warning system is completely useless if the driver, or in this case the justice system, just ignores the blinking red icon.
Right, they just ignore it until the engine literally catches on fire.
Yeah.
That is a phenomenal analogy, because if you put a piece of black tape over that dashboard light, you haven't solved the mechanical issue at all.
You just blinded yourself to it.
You have. The warning system is only as effective as the immediate action you take in response. And, well, what the source material reveals is a county justice system that is essentially driving with black tape over the dashboard.
And before we get into the how of this systemic blindness, I think we have to grasp the sheer unprecedented scale of the failure here.
The numbers are pretty shocking.
Really jump off the page. Right now in Cook County, there are exactly 246 people who were placed on ankle monitors who are completely unaccounted for.
246 human beings.
Yeah.
It's a number that is, it's somewhat hard to visualize until you put it into the context of an actual community. We aren't talking about a handful of administrative errors here.
Not at all.
We're talking about the equivalent of a fully booked commercial airliner full of criminal suspects just wandering freely without any oversight.
And the context makes it even more terrifying, honestly, because that group of 246 missing individuals makes up a massive 8% of the entire electronic monitoring population in the county.
8%.
8%.
Yeah.
And we need to be very clear with everyone listening about who is actually in this group.
Yeah, this isn't minor stuff.
No, we aren't just talking about, minor infractions or unpaid parking tickets. Some of these missing individuals are facing severe pending criminal cases, including active murder charges.
What's fascinating here is the stark contrast between the public's perception of this technology and the actual reality on the ground.
Oh, for sure.
Like when the general public hears the phrase ankle monitor, there is this immediate comforting assumption of absolute control.
Right, you picture some high-tech control room with giant screens.
Exactly. People assume authorities are actively watching a blinking red dot on a digital map. We assume it means 247 pinpoint GPS tracking.
And immediate consequences. You assume if a suspect takes one step outside their permitted zone, alarms are blaring, sirens are wailing, cars are instantly dispatched.
Yeah, that's the movie version of electronic monitoring.
But it's just not real.
No, it's not. The official admissions in these reports shatter that movie version entirely. The officials managing this program have bluntly admitted they have, quote, No idea where they are at.
None. Zero.
Zero. The report explicitly states they don't even know if these 246 suspects are still within the state of Illinois. They openly admit to having no clue.
Which is just wild to me.
It reveals a system that isn't providing actual security. It is providing a false sense of security. The technology is basically functioning as a placebo for the general public.
Which brings up something I really struggle to understand here. If 8% of literally any other critical public safety infrastructure failed completely, the reaction would be instantaneous.
Oh, it would be earth-shattering.
Right. Imagine if 8% of commercial airplanes just vanished from air traffic control radar today.
Everything would stop.
Society would ground every single flight immediately. Everything would halt until the system was audited and fixed. So why does an 8% failure rate in monitoring criminal suspects, some with murder charges, why doesn't that trigger a system-wide halt?
Well, this raises a fascinating and, frankly, terrifying concept in systems engineering. It's known as the normalization of deviance.
Normalization of deviance.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So in aviation, like you mentioned, the tolerance for failure is absolute zero because the immediate consequence is undeniably catastrophic to a massive group of people.
Right. A plane crashes, it's on the news instantly.
Exactly. But in large bureaucratic systems like criminal justice failures often start really small. Maybe it was just a 1% failure rate 5 years ago. Then it creeps up to 3%. And over time, the personnel within the system just become accustomed to the anomaly. The failure becomes the new baseline.
To just get used to it.
They accept that losing track of a few dozen people is just the cost of doing business. So by the time it reaches 8%, the deviance from the safety standard has been completely normalized. It's treated as a statistic rather than a 5-alarm fire.
But how does an individual person actually become one of those statistics? Let's break down exactly what happens at hour zero when a monitor fails.
Yeah, let's walk through it.
Because these devices aren't just, optional accessories. They are heavily engineered pieces of technology designed to trigger alerts for very specific reasons.
Mostly if the internal battery runs low or if the person violates their curfew by leaving their geofenced area.
Right. So to understand how they slip through the cracks, we have to understand the mechanics of that geofence.
Right. The ankle monitor isn't a magical tether. It relies on a cellular signal and GPS coordinates to create this invisible digital boundary around a person's house.
And as long as the device is charged and inside that boundary, it sends a steady heartbeat ping to the control center, like an all-good signal.
Exactly. But the moment that battery dies or the device crosses that invisible fence, that heartbeat stops. And an alert is instantly generated in this system.
So the technology does its job, the red light flashes. But here is where the procedural breakdown occurs, and it all centers around this crazy bureaucratic loophole called the 48-hour rule.
Yeah, the 48-hour rule.
According to the source material, when that alert flashes, a judge can legally only issue an arrest warrant after 48 hours have passed since the initial violation.
Just think about the operational reality of that rule for a moment.
It's insane.
If a monitor triggers a curfew violation alert, meaning a suspect awaiting trial has left their home unauthorized, the protocol essentially mandates a 2-day waiting period.
2 days.
Before law enforcement is even given the legal mechanism required to go apprehend them, it actively neutralizes the whole concept of real-time monitoring.
Wait, I have to stop you there. Because I understand bureaucracies move slowly, right? But someone had to write that rule. Are you telling me the system just ignores the alert completely?
That's what the procedure dictates.
Surely there must be some kind of triage system. Like, if it's someone with a minor offense who steps outside to get the mail, sure, put that alert in a pile and wait.
You would hope so.
But are you saying an alert for a suspect awaiting trial for a violent crime is treated with the exact same mandatory 48-hour delay?
Based on the operational procedures outlined in the reporting, yeah, the delay is systemic. Now, as to why such a seemingly absurd rule exists, we have to look at administrative bandwidth.
Meaning they just don't have the resources.
Right. Large county systems are perpetually under-resourced. If they dispatched police every single time a monitor lost cellular signal for 5 minutes,
Oh, I see.
or every time a battery dipped below 10%, the police force would literally be doing nothing else. So the 48-hour rule was likely instituted as a buffer.
To filter out the glitches and false alarms?
Exactly. It gives the suspect time to plug the device back in or step back into the cellular service area without triggering this massive law enforcement response.
I mean, I understand the logic of filtering out glitches, but we are talking about human behavior here.
Yeah, that's the unpredictable part.
It's like having a state-of-the-art multi-thousand-dollar home security system, but it's programmed to wait 2 full days to call the police after someone kicks in your front door.
Right, just to make sure it wasn't the wind.
Exactly. By the time the security company finally makes the call, the burglar isn't just out of the house. They are in another time zone. You are giving someone who wants to flee an automatic, system-sanctioned 48-hour head start.
It's a perfect analogy. And if we follow the timeline, you see how these compounding bureaucratic delays create an unsolvable problem. Because the failure doesn't end at hour 48.
No, it doesn't.
What happens at hour 49?
Right. Once that 48-hour grace period is up, a warrant is finally issued. But that doesn't mean a SWAT team kicks down a door.
Not at all.
That newly minted warrant enters a county system that is already completely backlogged. The source material explicitly states they are dealing with, quote, thousands of warrants.
It just enters the queue, it becomes another piece of paper, and the critical difference between hour 0 and hour 49 is the total loss of actionable intelligence.
Because they're gone.
Exactly. Over those 48 hours, the suspect has realized no one is coming. They have likely let the battery die completely, or they have physically cut the thick plastic band off their leg and thrown it in a dumpster.
So there is no longer an active, real-time alert pinpointing their location.
None.
And the reporting describes the aftermath perfectly. The suspects simply get lost in the pile.
Lost in a pile.
Without an active GPS signal to track, that specific individual transforms from a proactive tracking situation into a cold case.
Yeah, a clerk is just staring at a screen with thousands of names, and the missing suspect is just another drop in the ocean. Which really brings us back to the core realization about this technology. A tracking device is entirely dependent on the rapid response protocol attached to it.
If nobody responds, it's pointless.
Right. If you attach a mandatory 48-hour delay to the response, the physical device on the person's leg is functionally useless. It's just a dead piece of plastic.
The bureaucratic procedure actively neutralizes the multi-million-dollar technology.
It really does.
And that structural apathy you just described, that normalization of deviance, that is what directly paves the way for the human cost here.
It's the most tragic part.
Because as much as we are talking about administrative bandwidth and warrants and 48-hour rules, we cannot lose sight of the fact that these abstract systemic failures have devastating real-world consequences for public safety.
We have to look at what actually happens during those unmonitored hours.
The source material highlights 2 incredibly tragic cases that illustrate exactly what an offender does when they realize the leash is imaginary.
Yes. We have to move past the data points and look at the timeline of the fallout. These are situations where the system's inability to respond resulted in irreversible damage to innocent people.
Let's track the first case mentioned in the report. Lawrence Reed. We are talking about a career violent criminal. The report notes he had an astonishing 72 prior arrests.
72. It's just staggering.
Now, he was placed on an ankle monitor, he was out all night twice, and explicitly violated his curfew on November 17th. Let's walk through that timeline.
Okay.
The monitor flags the violation, the alert hits the system, and the countdown begins.
Right. So during hour 1, the system registers the violation, but the protocol dictates inaction.
They just wait.
During hour 12, the sun comes up. Reed is still out of his restricted zone. The system still does absolutely nothing.
And think about the psychological shift that happens in the mind of someone with 72 prior arrests during those hours.
Oh, absolutely.
At hour 1, maybe they're looking over their shoulder expecting the flashing lights. But by hour 24, when nobody has shown up, the deterrent effect completely vanishes.
They realize the threat of the ankle monitor is totally hollow. If we connect this to the bigger picture, electronic monitoring, fundamentally, requires the suspect's compliance. It relies heavily on the honor system.
The honor system for violent offenders.
Yeah. They have to plug the device into the wall. They have to choose to stay within the boundaries.
Right.
When authorities fail to immediately respond to ignored curfews, they are inadvertently sending a really powerful message to the offender that the boundaries do not exist.
They are basically giving a green light for escalating behavior.
Yes, they are.
And the escalation in Lawrence Reed's case was horrific.
Yeah.
Because the system failed to rein him in after multiple curfew violations, he remained on the street.
And we know what happened next.
The result of that unchecked freedom, he set a complete stranger on fire.
It is a profound failure of the social contract. The county told the public, we are monitoring this individual, you are safe.
But they weren't.
The reality was they were simply recording his non-compliance while doing absolutely nothing to stop it.
And that fatal reliance on the suspect's compliance is the exact focal point of the second case detailed in the report.
That case is just heartbreaking.
It involved a 26-year-old suspect with a history of trouble in his adult life. The breakdown here didn't start with some brazen escape. It started with something seemingly mundane.
He just didn't plug it in.
Right, he simply didn't get home to charge the battery.
Yeah.
So the monitor went dead.
And an uncharged battery is essentially the system going blind. It triggers a critical alert.
But again, nobody comes.
Right. Without an immediate physical intervention from law enforcement to go knock on the door and check on that dead monitor, the suspect is now entirely off the grid. The digital tether is just severed.
Off the grid with catastrophic consequences. Because he chose not to charge his battery, he was totally unmonitored. And during that blind spot, he embarked on a crime spree.
A terrible one.
It ended with a mother of 3 being pistol whipped, 1 police officer being murdered, and another officer left fighting for his life.
The state's attorney actually noted in the report that society should be deeply concerned by these events, and it's exactly because of this cascading chain of systemic failures.
It's all connected.
A dead battery on a piece of electronics should not result in a murdered police officer.
No, it shouldn't.
But when the protocol dictates waiting and the subsequent warrants just get lost in a pile of thousands, the safety net that the public implicitly believes is there completely evaporates.
Looking at these two timelines side by side, it really clarifies the root cause for me.
How so?
The failure isn't the lithium-ion battery. The failure isn't the cell tower ping. The hardware flashed the warning light exactly when it was supposed to.
The tech worked.
The core failure is a justice system that has procedurally mandated apathy. When the personnel managing the system are constrained by 48-hour rules and buried under an avalanche of backlogged warrants, apathy just becomes a survival mechanism for the workers.
That's a great point.
But that bureaucratic survival is paid for in blood by the public. It's a massive failure of public accountability.
That is the tragic reality of the normalization of deviance we talked about earlier. The system adapted to handle its own administrative overload, but in doing so, it entirely abandoned its primary mandate.
Which is ensuring public safety.
Exactly.
Which brings us to a final glaring contrast that I think perfectly encapsulates this entire deep dive today.
What's that?
Because despite everything we just laid out, the 246 missing people, the 8% failure rate, the 48-hour head starts, and the devastating human toll, the source material points out a very recent public statement from the Cook County Chief Judge.
Oh, right.
The judge told a local reporter that law enforcement is, quote, actively searching for the people at large.
A statement that directly contradicts the stark admission from earlier in the exact same internal report.
Yes.
Where officials plainly stated they have zero idea where these individuals are and no clue where to even start looking for them.
It is a stunning disconnect between public relations and operational reality. We have a justice system utilizing a tool that gives the community a feeling of safety, but it operates with massive loopholes that make that safety a complete illusion.
It's just PR.
And when the illusion inevitably shatters, when the engine catches fire, the official response is to claim they are actively searching, while simultaneously admitting behind closed doors that they have no clue where to look.
It forces us to confront a very uncomfortable truth about the future of criminal justice and accountability.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? What stands out to you? Because when you look at the raw mechanics of how this electronic monitoring program is actually functioning, or rather failing to function, it fundamentally changes how you view the infrastructure designed to keep your community safe.
It really does.
It makes you realize that an alert is useless without an action.
And I want to leave you with one final thread to pull on regarding that infrastructure. We are currently living in an era where technology like electronic monitoring is becoming increasingly prevalent as a primary alternative to traditional incarceration.
It's happening everywhere.
It is highly cost-effective, it reduces prison overcrowding, and it is heavily relied upon by courts across the country. But as we expand these programs, we have to ask ourselves a critical question.
What's that?
Are we mistakenly equating the mere presence of a digital device with actual control over the person's actions?
Wow.
If an ankle monitor is essentially just a digital suggestion, one that relies on the honor system, can be unplugged at will, and is buffered by 48 hours of bureaucratic delays, are we building the future of our justice system on an illusion of safety?
That is a phenomenal question to end on. Thank you all for joining us for this deep dive on PoliticallyX. If you found this breakdown insightful, please remember to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Stay safe out there, and we will see you next time.